several people inside this Quality Inn and Suites reported hearing a loud bang and then saw several people running through the lobby. They heard the gunshots and then a really loud exhaust. Neighbors showed us that the shooting happened right here in someone's yard. But what really caught my eye is who arrested these men. There are even metal barriers in front of the lounge now.
There was a car parked back there, thought it was a little suspicious.
That attack could be related to 2 other attacks earlier in the month.
It wasn't easy.
The news people are here because they want to talk to us, family, about Daddy.
But Guillermo Bernal's sister-in-law, Amanda Rodriguez, and his children invited me in to laugh and cry and tell me about this man in hopes that someone who knows something will be compelled to help detectives.
What matters to us is that we get justice for him.
Bernal was found at this apartment complex. Police say he'd been dead here for some time before they got there. His family tells us he was shot. No one knows why he was at this complex or who he was with.
The person that took my brother-in-law's life, he left my sister-in-law to raise all 6 of them alone. And I mean alone. Their dad was everything.
For his kids, it's confusing.
They see us crying and they just hug us, and they don't really understand everything.
It wasn't long before the tears came rolling down.
This is what they did to them, to us. This here is what they've done. They've taken their father.
As police urge anyone with a clue or an idea of what happened to help.
It just takes that one person to step forward and give us a little bit of information.
Rodriguez is doing what she can, visiting the complex where he died herself.
And that's what I kept saying yesterday when I walked out there, to those apartments, to the people that I spoke to. If you guys know anything, or if you saw anybody, or if you know the person, you let them know that they left his kids without their father.
Promising.
I'm that sister-in-law that's going to make sure that this case does not go cold.
Jacqulyn Powell, KXAN News.
KXAN crime reporter Jacqulyn Powell learned today ABD got 911 calls for years about a suspect vehicle before its driver was arrested, accused of hitting and killing a pedestrian last May. So she went to detectives to ask why this driver was not questioned sooner.
Robert, Sidney, it wasn't until James Dirks was charged with aggravated assault and a deadly road rage case that detectives started looking back to see if there had been any prior calls on him. Well, they found more than 40 people had called 911 on cars registered in his name since 2009. He was also listed as a suspect in a crash where their driver left the scene last year. And once detectives started questioning those 911 callers, they learned that in some cases, drivers say he showed weapons.
James Dirks bonded out of jail after he was arrested for hitting Eric Walls and leaving the scene in May. Walls died a day after the crash.
So we did go back and look at this person's history and were pretty blown away by the information that we saw.
On Wednesday, Dirks was arrested again, this time for an aggravated assault case more than a year earlier. The person reporting it told detectives who followed up that someone in Dirks' car pointed a knife at her in traffic and even ran at her with it when she pulled over to call 911. But it took that May death for them to circle back around.
She may have said it, maybe not, but it never made it to the text of the call. So officers were never aware, and the dispatcher was never made aware that a knife was pulled on this person.
Dozens of 911 calls before that never made it to detectives either because of the way the system works. Traffic violations are only misdemeanors. Officers only respond if they're in the area and have time.
If there's nothing more than a traffic violation at the time, then there won't be a report written, and there's not necessarily a database of anything that's collected on them.
Detective Nathan Sexton says he wishes there were some measure in place that would have helped catch this pattern of calls sooner. Right now, he's worried because Dirks' license hasn't been suspended. His car has been impounded, but if he bonds out of jail again...
There's nothing at the moment preventing him from borrowing or renting a car.
This is a reminder to drivers, if you see someone driving aggressively, do not follow them or try to confront them. Just try to get their license plate number and then call 911.
And Jackie, you did try to get information, right, about why his license wasn't suspended back in May, right?
I did, and APD can only request an automatic suspension in certain cases like a DWI, but these charges did not qualify. So I've asked DPS what kind of circumstances it would take to suspend a license. In a case like this, I haven't gotten an answer on that yet. I also asked the court that arraigned Dirks whether taking his license away could have been a condition of bond after what happened in May, but I was told that because of the kind of bond that was set, the judge likely wasn't able to specify any conditions.
Really interesting. Jackie, thank you so much.
Completely unwarranted and strange and gross and just not something I want anybody to have to encounter.
This woman, who we're not identifying, encountered it twice.
So I was able to pull my phone out and get a video.
A man in a dark gray Volkswagen Jetta touching himself inappropriately while looking over at her in traffic. The first time was on 183 near the McNeil Road exit at the end of March.
The first time, you know, it's obviously shocking. You're like, what is going on?
The second time was last Friday. The same man, she says, on the complete opposite side of town on South Lamar near Ben White.
And to see him the second time in such a short period of time in the complete opposite side of Austin was alarming and made me disheartened to know that nothing had happened since the last time.
This woman says she called 911 both times, but she wasn't asked to file a police report or even give her last name.
He's got to be driving around doing this a lot, and there have to be other people out there that have seen him doing this as well.
And there have been. Austin police say this past Sunday, someone called about a man doing the same thing in a completely different part of town on 620. Now sex crimes detectives are working to figure out if it could be the same suspect.
It's scary to me to think that this person is doing this out in public. Who knows what they're capable of doing behind closed doors as well.
Jacqulyn Powell, KXAN News.
Detectives say in most of those violent situations that involve drugs, it's not meth or cocaine, it's marijuana.
If you're willing to take a risk, you know, to be in jail the rest of your life over not a huge quantity of marijuana, that's what's surprising to me.
But APD's homicide unit supervisors say in a lot of violent crimes, that's the culprit, along with money.
It just boils down to they're going to rip this person off and they're going to turn around and sell it.
Sergeant Eric De Los Santos says it's become the norm to carry a gun to weed deals.
And unfortunately, you know, in a lot of these cases that we're talking about, it's young guys.
A trend that's tough to combat.
We need to invest more in our youth and give them alternatives to this and not glamorize this lifestyle.
Dahlia Tirado leads youth advocacy in Travis County. It's a nonprofit program that mentors at-risk kids and those who have already landed in juvenile court. She says marijuana is involved in about 95% of the cases she sees.
We've had kids Sean killed. We've gotten kids that have been the aggressors, where they, you know, have a gun and go into a place and try to steal it. We've gotten just deals gone wrong where they got shot.
Tirado says kids self-medicate with pot too often because of stress or neglect. She believes the #1 way to curb that is for parents to be proactive and start conversations about marijuana at a young age.
If you're not talking to them, someone else is. And so I think having those hard conversations early on is essential.
Jacqulyn Powell, KXAN News.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
I'm going to pass them out everywhere.
Ava Mitchell's parents began making these flyers last week after their daughter didn't come home Wednesday. Checking her Snapchat, they discovered their 12-year-old had been making plans to run away with this man, 23-year-old Brian Quintanar.
From what we've gathered from people we've talked to and just her social media that we have access to, he's been grooming our child for a few months at least. And we had no idea. Absolutely no idea.
APD detectives sent out this flyer Tuesday looking for him, the last person she was seen with, but don't accuse him of any crime and don't call him a suspect. Friends and neighbors have joined the search. One neighbor went to businesses near where Ava was last seen and found this security footage showing her getting out of a car and walking away with a man who looks like Quintanar. Police say they're investigating, but haven't treated this case like an Amber Alert because she chose to run away.
It's extremely disappointing. It's extremely frustrating. They keep saying she left willingly. She left on her own. She chose to leave. She's 12 years old. A child doesn't have the mental capacity to choose to make a life choice like that, to just leave on her own.
Mitchell's parents hope with enough help, someone will know where these two are.
We love her and we want her home.
Yeah, we just want her home.
Jacqulyn Powell, KXAN News.
This string of shootings is alarming. Working down here in 20 years, I've never seen violence like that before. So we decided enough is enough.
Cody Cowan leads the Red River Cultural District. He didn't want to wait even a day after this crime scene cleared. He rounded up about 75 others who run businesses in this area of downtown, along with the mayor, police chief, and council member Kathy Tovo for an emergency meeting.
We're one of the last contiguous live music streets in the country, and we deliver day after day on Austin's brand promise to be the live music capital of the world.
Police say the shootings on 7th Street last weekend and the weekend before that were targeted. The shooters and victims knew each other, but that wasn't the case Tuesday night.
It was a random incident. It was two groups, one staring at the other, and the verbal altercation became physical, and that is when the gun was introduced to the situation.
Both victims will live, and they're working to help police find these suspects. To protect the thousands of others who come here, Cowan says bar and restaurant staff in this area will start training with police on how to respond in crises. Some also plan to work on allowing APD live access to their security cameras through the city's Halo program.
We as a community don't want to sit back and armchair manage things. Though we want results, we want to be part of the solution.
Jacqulyn Powell, KXAN News.
So basically they just reached in through the window right here. The money was right here in this console.
Tyler Sample learned the hard way. His window smashed in and several $1,000s stolen after he'd stopped at his bank to withdraw his down payment for a new truck.
I walked out. I must have had the envelope in my hand for a split second before I put it in my pocket to get in the car. And I guess that split second is all it takes for someone like that to want to rob you.
He put the money in his center console, drove across the street to a convenience store.
And I went in for maybe 60 seconds, came back out, and my window was bashed in, and it was just completely devastating.
Cedar Park police say this is the 4th case of bank jugging they've seen in the past couple of months. It's an issue in departments all across Central Texas.
We're currently trying to work all together to figure out how to put it in and how to put a stop to this.
Property crimes detective Anthony Bridgewater says keep the money on your person and don't stop anywhere in between the bank and where you need to go with the cash.
Put it in a purse, put it in a briefcase, put it in your pocket. Don't let people see you walk out with the envelopes or the money bags.
Officers say juggers have followed people from a number of different banks in Cedar Park this year. In Sample's case, he was told this isn't the first time his was hit.
I think that the bank should be somewhat responsible for at least putting out signs or making the public aware. And if I would have read a sign, I feel like this could have all been prevented.
Jacqulyn Powell, KXAN News. Sisters Vanessa and Brianda Verdine take their safety seriously.
We both work overnight, so like 3 a.m. we get out of campus.
They pay attention anytime a violent crime is reported on campus and had no idea the university's numbers were so off.
It's shocking. It's just shocking. Yeah. Like I wasn't aware of that. I know they send out emails about like crimes that happen, but I never, like the numbers are really off.
She's referring to crime numbers like these. In 2016, Texas State only reported 7 rape cases when there were actually 21. And in 2017, the university reported just 1 when there were 17. The U.S. Department of Education noticed something was off.
The reports were coming in, the reports were being addressed by the officers, but when they were entered into the system, they were not calculated correctly.
Texas State says that was in part because of a software malfunction, but the school also blames the former university police leadership, saying it wasn't handling Clery reporting the way it should have been. And Texas State says there was a lack of communication between the different departments that receive crime reports. To fix the problem, the university's hired a new police chief. It's replaced the old malfunctioning software and has increased training for those using the new program. And Texas State's formed a new committee that meets monthly to go over every crime and make sure nothing's being duplicated or underreported between departments.
We're looking at those numbers. Humans are looking at them. Humans are tracking them. We're visiting across campus with our other departments.
Jacqulyn Powell, KXAN News.